Today on SuperSoul Sunday, for over 35 years, she's inspired millions around the world with her teachings on love, kindness, and compassion. Prolific author, Buddhist nun, and a pioneer of the mindfulness movement, Pema Chodron.
We're interconnected at such a vast level because what we're saying and doing and stuff, the ripples go out. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
We first met in 2014 when we discussed her best-selling spiritual guide, When Things Fall Apart, Hard Advice for Difficult Times.
If you don't know the nature of fear, then you can never be fearless.
Now, her first book in 7 years, called Welcoming the Unwelcome, Wholehearted Living in a Broken-Hearted World, invites readers to embrace suffering, to strengthen resilience. You can't know how to love unless you also know how to hurt.
That's right.
Pema believes that beneath anger, confusion, and fear is a basic goodness that connects us all.
Just like me, that person really wants to be loved. That person doesn't want to suffer. That person doesn't want hatred coming towards them.
Right. Plus, Pema addresses the recent sexual abuse allegations lodged against the Buddhist community. And when that happened, you felt what?
I felt angry with him. I felt deeply saddened for him and for the community.
So I'm happy to welcome you, Pema Chodron, to SuperSoul Sunday in my garden, in my flower garden.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
And it's wonderful that, you know, the last time we spoke about your book, I think it was like 5 years ago, When Things Fall Apart.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of having dinner with you last night, and you were sharing how remarkable it is still that all over the world you get messages from people who have seen or read that book and how it has moved them. How does that make you feel in terms of your Dharma work here on Earth?
Well, it makes me feel good. I guess that's the simple answer, you know, because honestly, sometimes people talk to me about their legacy and what they want their legacy to be and things like that. I realize I don't really think that way. What I care is about individual lives and that what I say might impact their lives in such a positive way, you know, particularly because there's so much suffering, and if it actually has alleviated someone's suffering to a certain degree, that's what gives me really deep satisfaction.
But you know what is so interesting? One of my most powerful teachers was Maya Angelou.
Right, I know.
And one of the things that she said to me when I'd come back from opening my school, and I said, Maya, my school is going to be my greatest legacy. And she said, you have no idea what your legacy will be, because your legacy is every life you touch. Right. It's not about institutions or your name on something, or it's every life you touch.
Well,
so the same
right.
is true for every person who has read When Things Fall Apart, every person who's been moved by something that you had to offer, that will be, that is
right.
your legacy.
That's right.
So now you've written, when I first saw the title, Welcoming the Unwelcome, I went, whoa.
What you said last night was, I don't want to welcome
I don't want to. That's exactly what I felt when I saw. Oh gosh, I don't know if that's. Is that a good title? Because I don't want to welcome. So you begin chapter 1. Chapter 1 is titled "Begin with a Broken Heart." Now I have to tell you that is what most of us are trying to avoid: is a broken heart. Why do you say start with a broken heart?
Well, it has to do with contacting that part of the human life that's vulnerable and tender and that's shared by other people, like empathetic sense of other people's vulnerability and tenderness. And somehow, if you get in touch with the real suffering that there is in the world, that's what I kind of mean by a broken heart or tender heart or a genuine heart. If you get in touch with that, it's like a link with humanity, you know, and that's the healing part, the interconnectedness with other people based on having stood in their shoes or they stood in your shoes or however you want to express it. But
so the book talks about how we can strengthen our resilience and stay connected with each other when we really want to withdraw. Right. And I know there was a point where you had some of your students tell you about what happens when they are in confusion, distress, any form of suffering. And what did you learn from that?
Mainly the attitude is, this is a whole part of being human. The vulnerable part, the tender part, the part that hurts. And it's very linked with the part that knows how to love and feel compassion. They're all kind of mixed in. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense.
And so...
That you can't know how to love unless you also know how to hurt.
That's right.
So when things show up for us that are uncomfortable, that cause us to suffer, and by suffer meaning we wish we weren't in this predicament.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Or cause stress, anxiety, confusion, a sense of hopelessness, where do I go? What's the first thing we should do?
Acknowledge what you're feeling. Acknowledge what you're feeling.
That is what you mean by welcoming the unwelcome.
Yeah. I mean, well, first it's just acknowledging, and, you know, welcoming might be a little loaded.
Yes.
Because maybe acknowledging is like, what you're acknowledging is that everything in you is shutting down.
Yes.
And that your mind is racing 100 miles an hour saying, it's their fault, or I'm a horrible person, or something like that.
So the first thing is to get as quickly as you can to acceptance.
Yeah, to recognize, and then it's almost like if you were doing it in steps, although it kind of comes together. Recognize and then welcome, embrace, accept. You're turning in that direction, you know.
Yes.
I think the next thing is there's various things that you could do at that point. For instance, go to your body and just locate it in your body. And I talk a lot about contraction and then learning how to open that or let it expand. Because if you're afraid, angry, any of those uncomfortable feelings, if you go to your body, you feel it as tightness, you know? It's just, that's how it feels. So I guess it's like making friends with that tightness or being kind to that tightness.
You actually talk about breathing it in and then exhaling out.
That's a practice.
That is.
Yes. That's a practice. Traditional Buddhist practice of Tonglen is that when someone else is suffering, you're willing to take it in so that they don't have to have it. That's kind of at most advanced. But I've taken that and worked a lot with it, with the idea that when the pain is there, say, you acknowledge, and then the way that you could welcome or something is to breathe it in, like open to it. So
it feels like the exact opposite of what you want it to do.
Habitually, you would never do this.
Yeah. What you want to do is reject that thing.
Absolutely.
That's causing you pain or suffering. So
that's why instead, there's something in there that says, you know, maybe I could do something different. Maybe I could move towards it.
So welcoming the unwelcome, you write about the Buddhist principle of basic goodness.
Yeah.
The idea that human beings are fundamentally good and loving, and we naturally want to be there for others. On page 8, you write, not understanding the basic goodness of our true nature as at the root of all of our suffering. It lies beneath everything we do to harm ourselves and others. How so?
When you read that,
yes.
what do you hear?
What I hear is that no matter what the world looks like on the exterior,
right.
and we are fed a daily dose of negativity, because that's what the news is.
That's right.
And you are surrounded by influences that tell you all the time that things are going wrong.
Right.
And what it says to me is to remember that all of that is just a facade, that's just a cover.
That's right.
For what's really inside.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, so that is really what I'm getting at. And you asked me a question actually last night about if you're trying to communicate, what's the most important thing to try to communicate? Yes. Thinking about it afterwards, I thought, absolutely the most basic thing is that people feel so bad about themselves. And if there's any way to communicate in a way that they can take it in and hear it, that actually they're complete just as they are, and that there is nothing wrong with them. And there's temporary obstacles or temporary things in the way, but that's like clouds, you know, they pass. And the fundamental state is always open and fresh and unbiased, and it's always there. But so in other words, those, what we call our faults or our failings or stuff, are temporary and removable. And even those How do you work with those? Not by getting rid of them, but by coming to know them really well.
Coming up, there's this exercise that you say when you look at other people and you say, I think is it that
Just
could,
like me.
Just like me. Yeah, I've taken it to, that could be me. You know, we've all used the phrase there, but for the grace of God.
That's right.
But I
That's
love this
another one.
idea of when you see something going on with another person, and even if you're just stuck in traffic and you're getting upset with them, you do the just like me exercise. Can you
That's
share
right.
that? I like that.
Well, it's really helpful. You can do it anytime. Like, for instance, sitting and waiting, you know, for anything. You can just look around at people and whether they seem stressed or happy or whatever, you can say, just like me, you know, we are alike. Just like me, that person really wants to be loved. That person doesn't want to suffer. That person doesn't want physical pain. That person doesn't want hatred coming towards them.
Right, just like
that
me.
person, just like me, just like me. But so it's very, very useful if, like, you're in these irritating situations like a traffic jam. It's so...
Or at the airports. People
or-
get so frustrated at the
Oh,
airport.
I know. So you sit there and you just start, instead of fuming, which gets you nowhere except, you know...
More fuming.
More fuming. You start looking at the people in the other cars or other people sitting in the airport or everything. And just like me, these people had someplace to go, and they're being delayed. And just like me, they're fretting about it. And just like me, you know, they're just human beings who
want to be where they are trying to get to.
And just like me, it would really be helpful if there was some other way they could deal with it, you know?
Yes.
So here's some advice. You know,
Yes.
the advice would be just start seeing the humanity of all the people in the cars around you.
You know, I would have to say that one of the things, the great lessons of having a talk show every day for 25 years and interviewing over 37,000 people one-on-one, I got that just like me thing. I understood
Oh, I bet
that
you
this
did.
there's this human common denominator
Yeah.
of our experience.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
just like me, everybody wants to be heard. And just like me, everybody wants to know that they matter.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I often say to people who are having trouble with their parents, and you know, often their parents are like my
Yes,
age,
yes.
right? But you know, they like are going to go home and they're dreading it. And now I said, well, I got advice once. Enter into their lives. Instead of struggling against and being resentful that they're not interested in your life, just for that, keep the visit short, and for a couple of days there, just sit and enter into their life. Do whatever they're doing, like watching television all day long when
Yeah.
you'd rather be out playing tennis or something. And the other thing is, ask them about their childhood.
Yes.
Ask them about their life.
Yes.
And I said, really, it's worth taking a tape recorder, because for you to start hearing about your mother or father's childhood is...
Yeah, I did that with my mother toward the end. I actually, when my mother, we knew that my mother was dying and wouldn't be on Earth much longer and was making her transition, I went back to Milwaukee and I sat in the room. She was in this little room where she watches television, where the temperature was like 87 degrees, and she's watching The Bold and the Beautiful and the Young and the Restless all day long and watching the game show. And I just sat in the room.
Yeah.
Just sat
That's
in the
right.
room.
That's right.
And sometimes it's enough just to be there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I had an interesting experience once with my mother, because she retired. She and my father retired to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But then he died, maybe 6 years before she left Mexico. And so I would go down there, you know, I'd be just dying to get out and walk in the markets and everything. She would stay in her room, all the shades drawn, and again, just watching television. Like, she wasn't in Mexico even,
Right.
you know?
Could have been anywhere.
And so my feeling was, so I got this advice, just enter her world. So I went, and as you say, it was so hot in there, it was so dark.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and basically I am just so restless and just almost have to tie myself down to just kind of be present, because I want to get out. And after a while, I just started to relax. And after a while, it got kind of interesting, actually. Every once in a while, the door would open and someone would come in, and it'd be like a little vignette of life. Someone would interact with her or bring her something or something, and I'd see her reaction, that person's reaction, then they'd leave, and we'd be back to this sort of status quo of boredom. But after a while, it became like being in a theater show or something, you know, being on stage. And almost like a theater piece. I don't know what to say except that it changed from being dreadful and something I wanted to avoid to something I actually got into it with
That's right.
her.
You became present enough to actually
Transcend
yes, absolutely.
my resistance.
So a Buddhist principle we hear about is enlightenment. And I think that enlightenment, I remember when I was doing the Oprah show, that was a part of the mission statement, that we were doing a show to inform, to enlighten as well as entertain. A lot of people get intimidated by that word enlighten.
It's very intimidating, I
Yes,
think.
because it sounds like
It sounds like unattainable.
unattainable.
Yeah.
Do you think you have attained it?
Enlightenment? No,
Enlightenment.
I would not say I have.
Yeah. You would not say you have.
I would not.
You're helping us welcome the unwelcome. You're helping us get through when things fall
I would say
apart.
that I've moved a long way in my life away from being reactive and stuck and polarizing and feeling that I'm separate from other people. But I don't. Maybe the term is too grand. If you were to say, have you in your lifetime, are you able to be more present with your own body and mind and with other people and with situations? I'd say absolutely, you know. I'd say absolutely. But I feel I've just started on this adventure and, you know.
You do?
Yeah, I do. A little old, but just be feeling that way. But I felt this way for...
But don't you think that the ultimate enlightenment, because one of the things, I remember when my life changed immensely when I recognized, first of all, that what I had referred to as God my whole life,
Yeah,
you know, was not up in the sky,
yeah,
taking names and watching me like Santa Claus, making a list and checking it twice.
right.
I remember that sense of being opened up when I recognized that God was in all, that
Yeah.
the force of life, by whatever name you call it, is in all, and that we are all connected.
That's right.
And that felt kind of enlightening to me.
Well, yeah, there's moments
Of
there's
awareness and
there's
of
moments in
enlightenment.
I think I mentioned it somewhere in the book, but you know, Buddhism being full of categories and stuff like that.
Yes.
They say when you have your first enlightenment experience, it has this Buddhist name, first bhumi.
Yeah.
So then, that's just beginning.
Right.
There are
Levels and levels and levels.
levels.
Yes.
And actually, people ask me, why did you become a nun, you know? And I say, well, definitely I never would have chosen it as a life thing.
Yeah.
Being a nun had a lot of real negative associations, but I saw it as devoting my whole life to going deeper, deeper, deeper.
Coming up, what has been your greatest awakening so far, would you say?
Well, I've had any number of times when I would say time stood still, where I just had that profound sense of timeless, I now use the word nowness, meaning fully present is not just, it's not just mindfulness, like noticing the colors of the flowers or something, although that's part of it. It's also, quite importantly, a feeling of this moment of time is infinite.
Yeah.
It's infinite. So that's an experience, an ongoing experience I've had. The other ongoing experience that I have is a feeling of, I never know how to express this, but like that things are neutral in a way. Like all the things we see and hear and everything are neutral in the sense that one person hears it and they say it's bad, and the
Yes.
other person hears the same thing and says it's good. That's what I mean by neutral. It's sort of like...
It has its influence depending on whatever your background is,
That's
where you
right.
come from,
And it's not
your interpretation.
That's right.
But it's neutral.
That's
Yes.
right. So that was initially a very profound experience because
That allows you to hear both sides, actually.
It makes it painfully, you can't not hear both sides. And the other thing is that
Well, you got to be enlightened to do that.
when I first...
I'm here to prove your enlightenment to you.
I see, all right. But when I first had that insight, I just broke down and cried and cried and cried. And the reason was because I thought everyone is causing themselves and others so much suffering just because they don't understand that. They just don't understand that. So racism, sexism, and all of these things that cause so much pain and suffering all comes from thinking that something that is just neutral is bad or threatening or something like that.
So we're talking about one of the great awakenings or life lessons. Did you learn about karma or did you already know about karma? I love what you write on page 13. You say, every word we speak and every action we perform affects our future. I'm going to say that again for the world. Every word we speak and every action we perform affects our future. But where do words and actions come from? They all start from our mind. And when we indulge in resentment or obsession or self-righteous thinking, we create several problems for ourselves. First, we suffer the immediate pain of those thoughts and emotions. Then we often act out in ways that cause ourselves and others harm. Finally, we reinforce a habit that we would be better off without. Such
Pretty
wise,
good.
Pretty good. Such awakening, wise, enlightenment
I think maybe I'm
words.
better on paper than in person.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Well, do you believe that's true? I
know it's true.
I know it's true.
It's actually the third law of motion in physics, I call it. It's for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, it is like physical, scientific law.
Every year I take a period of time, usually about 100 days or so, where I go into solitary retreat alone and I just meditate. And
how long are you alone? How long?
About 100 days.
100 days?
So, well, that's 3 months and a half, 3.5 months. It's not like I never see anybody, but I pretty much am alone and not talking. It's my favorite thing to do. I love people, but basically, I love solitude. I love it.
Wow.
So I had this insight. I was sitting there, and I'd gotten a letter, or I was worried about one of the grandchildren or something, and so I started this little obsession. and one of the things is I've become very aware of what my mind is, what the storyline is that's going on, you know? So I was aware that I was doing that and that it was impacting me. I was kind of tensing up and stuff. And I thought, even in complete solitude, what you're doing is affecting the world. Now, I don't know if you would agree with that, but it struck me that the ripples go out. The ripples go out. You know, we know so much about that we're interconnected at such a vast level because what we're saying and doing and stuff, the ripples go out.
Yeah.
So I realized even without talking or being with another person, the
ripples are going out.
Yeah, so it matters, you know. It really matters how we respect ourselves, how we're kind to ourselves, and how we really acknowledge that we're causing ourselves suffering by all this obsessing and stuff.
And though we can't predict or control what will come up next or how we will feel about it, we can do something about how we react. We can work on how we relate to whatever comes up.
That's exactly right. Yeah. We can relate to whatever comes up. And that's where meditation comes in, because you become so much more aware of what you're thinking. You become so much more aware that you're escalating. You know, it's like some kind of awareness begins to dawn. Mostly what happens, I would say, for myself and working with a lot of other people, is what you become aware of is where you're stuck. You become aware that you're obsessing, say, or that you're working yourself into a rage, talking about your sister-in-law or somebody, to yourself. see that you're doing that, acknowledge that you're doing that, and then turn towards the feelings themselves. Forget about the sister-in-law and the whole thing. Just turn towards yourself and get in touch with that. Now, people do ask me, well, there's some situations where, and this would be like the boys in Central Park, the 5 boys, you know, where the situations are so horrendous. Does this apply to something like that? And I'm thinking it applies because you become so much more able to be an effective agent for change. Because you're not blinding yourself with your emotional reactivity, you're really understanding and you're fully embodying whatever it is you're feeling without making it bad, but with some kind of kind attitude about you're just a human being. But on the other hand, you're not continuing with the rant, whether it's verbal or in your mind. And so somehow in that process, you are more just open and available to the people in front of you. And you don't see them as adversaries or enemies, you know. Even the people that do these terrible things to people, you wish you could find a way to communicate to their humanness.
Yes.
And the more you're not blocked, the more you can communicate to their humanness.
Coming up, this is the great lesson for us all. And it comes in welcoming the unwelcoming. You share this, that the person who has caused you the greatest humiliation,
Right.
the greatest pain,
Right.
the greatest suffering,
Yeah.
is also your greatest teacher.
That's
and
right.
we should be thanking that person.
That's right. Well, someone was asking me about the other day, said, I really don't buy that, you know. But so we had a good conversation.
Yeah.
But
you don't have to buy it or not. If you can
they-
see it, though, you can open up to it. You know?
Yeah, and traditionally that's called something like troublemakers as gurus.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're your teachers.
Yeah, I share the story that when I was moving from Chicago, I was going through all of my old stuff and found all these love letters that I'd written to someone in my 20s. And I sat in the closet weeping for the woman I was.
Yeah, I know.
Grateful that I had come through whatever my delusions were.
Yeah.
And also said a thank you to that guy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought, well, look who turns out to be one of my greatest teachers.
That's right.
The person that I thought was causing me the
That's
greatest
right.
pain.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it takes time to get there. It takes time. It's hard to see it when they're there.
No, when you're in it. But I think, you know, people do have a lot of wisdom, and if they read a book like this one, or When Things Fall Apart, or any of them, and that message kind of clicks as like, this is interesting to me, then sometimes people, they stumble on the truth of it themselves.
Yeah.
It's in there. They already know it somehow.
Yeah. Do we just keep getting reinforced what we already know? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, until you stop doing that.
Yeah.
But I would say if you just looked out at humanity, you know, on all the continents of the world, that mostly that's what's happening. You just keep reinforcing the view that you already have. And as you get older, well, yeah, what happens is your world just gets smaller and smaller, you know. You're more and more afraid of more things.
I wanted to ask you about this idea of things getting reinforced and karma coming up for you when the allegations of sexual abuse in Shambhala that were made about a year ago. There was a New York Times headline that read, "The King of Shambhala Buddhism is undone by abuse report." Now, we've seen this behavior in Catholic priests and Boy Scout leaders and Hollywood executives, and now I think people have become awakened to it. There is no place where it's not.
That's right.
And now the Buddhist community has been rocked by allegations of sexual abuse.
That's
and when
right.
that happened, you felt what?
I felt, oh man, you feel such a gestalt of feelings, you know. I felt angry with him. I felt deeply saddened for him and for the community. Those were the main feelings, I think, mixed together.
when that happens and it comes in and it rocks your world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like a rug pulling out experience,
Yeah.
right? Now,
And in that case, I think 20 other reports came out of sexual misconduct by other leaders in Shambhala. Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
the situation is horrendous, you know, and my future is just completely up in the air, you know. Now, I mean, I'm too old to actually worry about it too much
You're
because
still a senior teacher there, though, right? Yeah.
I am officially still a senior teacher there.
Yeah.
But I also have another teacher who I've had for since '99, and I also more outside of Shambhala
Right.
than in Shambhala. So in a way, and as I say, things like solitary retreat are my most favorite thing. But for many people, they completely were devoted to him. And I have always known him since he was a teenager, and we've always had a strong heart connection. But on the other hand, it wasn't the same for me as for these people that had never had another teacher or anything. And for them, their life is just blown up in the air, and they can't imagine how they're going to go forward, you know, with their spiritual practice.
So, as you know, in a follow-up investigation, there was an unnamed woman who said that you ignored her reports of sexual abuse and that this allegedly happened over 15 years ago. And she claims that she reported being raped to you and you responded by saying, I don't believe you. And if it's true, I suspect that you were into it. And then in September 2018, after speaking with her, you issued this statement saying, I was able to tell her that I feel very differently now. I believe what she told me. And going forward, I hope to be a better listener and not again say such insensitive and hurtful remarks to those who come to me for help. What did you learn about yourself through this? Because you all had a phone conversation,
Yeah,
right?
we had a long, good phone conversation. Well,
What did this teach you?
yeah. Well, it tuned me in again to how important it is to allow people to change. Myself in this case, you know. But in this whole very important movement that's happening now, the Me Too movement, which I really applaud. I'm glad it's happening. But I think that where it gets problematic for me is when people don't allow for someone to change. They just fix them in their mind as demon, you know, completely bad, like frozen in time, and they don't allow for the fact that someone might learn from this and might change, you know. So for me, that whole thing of that people are not fixed. People are fluid and dynamic and always changing. And you have to help people.
So when you had the conversation with the woman who had accused you of not hearing her 15 years ago, what did you say to her?
She agreed, first of all, to talk to me, so she knew why I was calling, and I said, I'm calling up to apologize, but first of all, I wonder if there's something you want to say to me. And then she talked for about half an hour, telling me the whole situation again and what had happened to her and how she had come to me and what she had felt like when she left.
Did you hear it differently this time?
Oh, of course, yeah. Completely differently. And the thing is, it was long enough ago that I don't remember exactly how I heard it then. However, she certainly remembers. And that, to me, was the most important thing, is that she felt heard and that she felt acknowledged, and that I was very grateful she accepted my apology.
And did you regret the way she perceived you had handled it before?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so it was a wake-up call. I thought, oh my goodness, you know, I had kind of a rosy picture of me doing countless interviews with people and then them being the better for it. And then, you know, I thought, whoa, I bet this is not the only woman that left feeling not heard in one way or another, you know? And that it isn't always a rosy picture, but my intention always is to help, you know? That's always my intention, and not to hurt somebody. So, of course, I felt enormous regret that I had left her feeling so traumatized, actually, you know.
By the time you got off the phone, what had happened?
We had communicated from the heart, and we both felt that we had some sense of resolution around the relationship. We both agreed to keep in touch, you know, now and then. And I said to her, if you feel like at any time, if things are painful for you and you want to talk to me, I think you can trust me in present time. And she said, well, thank you very much for that. And so like that, you know.
So you think she felt heard by the end of the conversation?
She articulated that she felt heard.
Coming up, what do you think about this moment we're in? We're talking about this Me Too moment where women who have experienced, endured, you know, sexual harassment, even sexual assault, feeling uncomfortable, now feel like being able to speak up liberates them in a way that they could not have been prior to this moment.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, there is countless of us women who didn't think at the time it was so culturally accepted that what happened to us in the office or what happened to us in a marriage or whatever, you know, our husband and our mutual friends or any of this stuff. And then you think, oh my gosh, that was not a good thing.
Yes,
so
our generation, my generation, I mean, I think of the things that I have allowed to be said to me and the things that I tolerated and what I put up with in offices and what you know, that I feel that for even my young daughters who are from South Africa, they wouldn't tolerate it one moment. They wouldn't.
No, I know.
Yes.
My grandchildren,
wouldn't
my
take it 1 second.
Not a second.
Not a second.
That's
not
right.
a second.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think that's a good thing
That's
that we've
really
gotten
a
to
good
this
thing.
point.
That's really a good thing. But just to say again, the only part of it that I always want to address is when your mind gets frozen and someone becomes like a demon or, you know, like that. Like there's no room to say maybe they'll change or maybe
But if there's been a criminal act.
Yeah.
If
but
there's
acts have consequences,
yes,
and
if
they
there has
should
been a
have.
criminal act.
Oh yeah, that's right. But that doesn't mean that that man or woman is permanently has to be like that forever. I mean, that's the problem with the criminal justice system, is that they are just fixed in there for what their crime was, and there's very few prisons actually address trying to help people move along.
I think this moves in stages. You know, I've spoken to women who have been assaulted and have just now gained the freedom or the ability actually for themselves to say what has happened. And I've asked this question about when is there room for forgiveness? And several of them have said to me, we're not ready to talk forgiveness yet. We're just getting our voices to be heard.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You know, so just as everything goes in stages, grief moves in stages, life moves in stages. The stage now, I think, is can we actually be heard?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? And does what I say matter?
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to a woman.
So we're not ready to get there.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. That you have to allow
this moment.
You have to be where you are.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And it's been a big education for me to realize why, for instance, a woman would allow it to happen again.
Yeah.
Or why a woman would never have spoken up. Or all these things, which I really understand now.
So you say the wonderful irony about the spiritual journey is that we find it only leads us to become just as we are. That the exalted state of enlightenment is nothing more than fully knowing ourselves and our world just as we are. In other words, the ultimate fruition of this path is simply to be fully human. And the ultimate benefit we can bring to others is to welcome them, also realize their full humanity just as they are.
Yeah. See, that came out of that insight about what I'm saying, that things are neutral.
Yeah.
That you accept yourself currently, today, just as you are, like fretting or frustrated, or it's by learning to know the clouds, then you see their transparency and you realize the sky has always been there. Do you see what I mean by that? Yeah.
Oh, I definitely know what you mean by that. Because you know why?
Why?
One of my favorite moments on the planet as a human being is to be on the ground and it's raining and you're at the airport and you get on the plane and you shoot above the clouds.
Oh, yeah.
And that moment where you shoot above the clouds and it's all just like softness and light.
That's right.
And you see the sun and it was always there.
That's right.
That's exactly the moment that's on the cover, where you're beneath the clouds and then you shoot above the clouds. This is exactly the moment I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never even saw it that way before.
That's exactly what. Oh, I love that when that happens. I never saw it that way before. That's exactly the moment I'm talking about. It's great.
Now that's a famous analogy in Buddhism, that the sun is always there, and that we say, oh, the sun's not shining today, because we're experiencing ourselves as the sun's not shining. But if you begin to adopt a different way of, like, the sun is always shining, and you can get to it, but not by getting rid of the clouds exactly, but by seeing how ephemeral the clouds are. But anyway, getting to know what blocks it with kindness is magical.
And that is what welcoming the unwelcome is all about.
That's right.
Full circle. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.